Lieutenant Nora Winters never expected her background in sound engineering would save humanity. The night everything changed, she sat in her small apartment's makeshift studio, analyzing acoustic frequencies for a military research project. Her fingers danced across the specialized equipment, adjusting wavelengths and monitoring patterns that would later prove crucial to humanity's survival. The first sign something was wrong came as a subtle vibration through her equipment. The reading spiked in patterns she'd never seen before, defying known physics. Through her window, the night sky shimmered like heat waves rising from hot pavement, though the air was cool and still. Nora's military training kicked in. She quickly began recording the anomalous readings, her heart racing as she recognized that whatever caused them was definitely not natural. The air itself seemed to crystallize, forming geometric patterns that caught and refracted moonlight in impossible ways. That's when she saw them. The meridians. Their crystalline bodies towered 12 feet tall, faceted surfaces catching and splitting light into rainbow cascades. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their translucent forms seeming to phase through solid matter like ghosts made of living crystal. In the chaos that followed, Nora managed to activate her emergency beacon, but the signal died before it could reach command. The aliens' presence somehow disrupted all electronic communications. As they approached, she noticed how they seemed to communicate through vibrations, their crystalline bodies resonating with complex harmonic frequencies. The being that appeared to be their leader, whom she would later know as Sentinel Prime Rodax, stepped forward. Its crystalline form pulsed with internal light, creating patterns that somehow translated into words in her mind. Specimen 247, your species presents an anomaly that requires study. Nora found herself trapped in a containment field of pure energy, her body lifting off the ground. But even as fear gripped her, her analytical mind never stopped working. She noticed how the aliens' crystalline forms vibrated in specific patterns when they generated their energy fields. More importantly, she observed how certain sounds from her equipment caused minute distortions in their structures. The journey to their ship passed in a blur of crystalline corridors and humming energy fields. Other humans were there too, suspended in similar containment cells. Military personnel mostly, she noted, though some appeared to be civilians. The Meridians had been selective in their abductions, choosing subjects that interested them for reasons yet unknown. Their holding cells were constructed of the same living crystal as the aliens themselves, transparent walls that could become opaque at will. Nora watched as her fellow captives reacted with varying degrees of panic or stoic resignation. But she remained calm, her mind already working on the puzzle before her. The Meridians clearly believed their crystalline technology made them invincible. They didn't bother hiding their methods or capabilities from their human captives, confident that primitive beings couldn't possibly understand, let alone threaten, their advanced civilization. This would prove to be their first mistake. As Nora was processed and placed in her permanent cell, she continued gathering information. Every sound, every vibration, every resonant frequency was carefully noted and categorized in her trained mind. The Meridians communicated through complex harmonics, their entire technology seemed based on crystalline resonance patterns. And where there were patterns, there were vulnerabilities. Night and day became meaningless aboard the alien vessel, but Nora maintained her focus. She observed how the crystal walls of her cell responded to different sounds she made, from humming to tapping to vocal frequencies. The changes were subtle, almost imperceptible, but they were there. The same way certain frequencies could shatter a wine glass, she theorized that the right combination of sounds might disrupt the Meridian's crystalline structure. Other captives began to notice her methodical approach. Through careful observation and trial and error, she learned to communicate with them by exploiting tiny imperfections in the crystal wall's resonance field. A network slowly formed among the prisoners, with Nora at its center, though the Meridians remained oblivious to this development. Sentinel Prime Rodax visited her cell regularly, intrigued by her calm demeanor and apparent interest in their technology. The alien believed she was simply displaying the expected curiosity of a primitive being confronted with superior technology. In reality, every interaction gave Nora more data, more understanding of their weaknesses. As the first week of captivity drew to a close, Nora had confirmed her initial theory. The Meridian's crystalline structure was their greatest strength but also their greatest vulnerability. Their entire civilization was built on precise harmonic frequencies. The right discordant sound could shatter their carefully maintained order. Now she just needed to find that exact frequency, and more importantly, a way to generate it with the limited resources available to her. The other captives would be key to her plan. Each one could contribute a specific frequency, and if coordinated properly, their combined voices might create the destructive harmony she needed. But timing would be crucial. One failed attempt would alert the Meridians to their capability, and that advantage would be lost forever. As Nora lay in her cell that night, watching the strange stars streak by through her crystal window, she allowed herself a small smile. The Meridians had chosen their test subjects carefully, looking for the best examples of human military capability. But they had failed to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or technology, but in their ability to observe, adapt, and overcome. The aliens' own arrogance would be their undoing, and Nora Winters would be the key to their defeat. The testing began at what Nora estimated was dawn, though time had become a fluid concept aboard the Meridian vessel. A shimmering field of energy transported her from her cell to a vast chamber whose crystalline walls stretched so high they disappeared into darkness. Other human captives were brought in as well, each contained within their own portable force field. Sentinel Prime Rodax's form materialized from the crystal floor itself, rising like a sculpture taking shape from liquid glass. Today we begin our assessment of human adaptability. The aliens' thoughts resonated directly in their minds. Your species has displayed remarkable survival traits despite your biological limitations. Nora watched as the chamber transformed around them. The crystal walls flowed like water, reshaping themselves into complex geometric patterns. Environmental conditions shifted rapidly: heat, cold, varying gravity, atmospheric pressure changes. Some of the other captives panicked, but Nora remained focused on the subtle harmonics that accompanied each transformation. Among the prisoners, she noticed a former Navy SEAL who maintained the same calculating composure she did. Through subtle gestures and expressions, they established a silent communication. His name was Marcus Rodriguez, she learned later, and he had noticed the same patterns she had in the aliens' technology. The Meridians subjected them to increasingly complex challenges. Combat scenarios against crystal constructs, puzzle rooms that rearranged themselves, endurance tests in extreme conditions. But what fascinated Nora most was how each challenge was controlled through specific resonant frequencies that rippled through the crystal architecture. During one particularly grueling test, she found herself paired with Rodriguez in a shifting maze. As they navigated the crystalline corridors, he whispered, "The walls sing different notes when they move. Like a giant musical instrument." Nora nodded, pleased that someone else had noticed. "And every note has a counternote that could disrupt it," she replied quietly. Their performance in the tests drew the attention of Junior Sentinel Lysrix, a younger Meridian scientist who approached their species with more curiosity than condescension. Unlike the others, Lysrix engaged them in actual conversation, eager to understand human perspectives. This would prove to be another crack in the Meridians' perfect facade. Through careful questioning, Nora learned that the Meridians had evolved on a world of living crystal, developing technology that merged perfectly with their natural form. They viewed organic life as messy and inefficient, yet somehow humans had caught their attention. "Your species adapts too quickly," Lysrix explained. "You solve problems in ways our predictive models cannot anticipate." Between tests, Nora worked to expand the network of communication between prisoners. She taught others to recognize the harmonic patterns, to feel the resonant frequencies that powered their captors' technology. Rodriguez proved an invaluable ally, his military training complementing her technical knowledge. The breakthrough came during what the Meridians called a stress response analysis. The chamber had been filled with crystalline obstacles that emitted painful sonic pulses. As Nora navigated the course, she hummed different notes, testing their effect on the crystal structures. One particular frequency caused a barely perceptible crack in a nearby obstacle. That night, in her cell, Nora methodically worked through the mathematics. The Meridian's technology operated on a complex system of harmonic resonance, but it wasn't perfect. There were frequencies in the human vocal range that could create destructive interference patterns in their crystalline structure. Rodriguez and the others helped her refine the theory. Each prisoner would focus on a specific note, their combined voices creating a harmonic discord that could potentially shatter the Meridian's control over their technology. But they needed more than just the right frequencies, they needed the right moment. That moment seemed to approach as Lysrix revealed the true purpose of their tests. The Meridians weren't just studying humans out of scientific curiosity, they were assessing humanity's potential as a threat. Other organic species had fallen easily to their superior technology, but humans displayed an unpredictability that worried them. "Your kind learns too quickly," Lysrix confided during one of their conversations. "You see patterns where there should be none, find solutions that defy logical progression. The High Council fears what humanity might become if left unchecked." Nora carefully kept her expression neutral, but inside her mind raced. The Meridians planned to neutralize humanity before they could become a true threat. The abductions and tests were just the preliminary phase of a larger invasion plan. They had to act soon, before it was too late. As she was returned to her cell that night, Nora caught Rodriguez's eye across the chamber. A subtle nod passed between them. The next phase of testing would begin tomorrow, but this time the humans would be ready. They had found the flaw in the Meridian's perfect crystalline armor, now they just needed the right moment to shatter it. Through the transparent walls of her cell, Nora watched the stars streak by, their light fracturing through the crystal ship into rainbow patterns. Tomorrow would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of all humanity. As she drifted off to sleep, she focused on the precise frequency she would need to generate, the exact note that would begin the cascade of destruction. The Meridians had built their entire civilization on harmony, never imagining that discord could become a weapon. The day of reckoning began with an unexpected advantage. Junior Sentinel Lysrix, driven by scientific curiosity, had scheduled all human test subjects for a group assessment. It was meant to study their collective problem-solving abilities, but it would instead become their moment of liberation. Nora surveyed the massive testing chamber as the crystalline walls pulsed with energy. 37 humans stood in formation, each knowing their role in what was to come. Rodriguez caught her eye from his position at the far edge of the group, his slight nod confirming that everyone was prepared. They had spent weeks practicing their specific tones under the guise of stress responses to the tests. Sentinel Prime Rodax materialized in the chamber, flanked by a dozen other Meridian observers. Their crystalline forms sparkled with internal light as they prepared to begin the day's experiments. "Today we will observe human group dynamics under extreme pressure," Rodax's thoughts resonated through their minds. "Your performance will determine humanity's potential threat level." The irony of that statement was not lost on Nora. As the chamber began to reconfigure itself, she took a deep breath, focusing on the precise frequency she needed to generate. The other prisoners did the same, each preparing their assigned note in what would become a symphony of destruction. The test began simple enough. The humans were required to navigate a series of increasingly complex crystalline mazes while solving mathematical puzzles embedded in the walls. The Meridians watched with their usual air of superiority, unaware that their captives were actually positioning themselves according to a carefully orchestrated plan. Lysrix, ever curious, moved closer to observe their problem-solving methods. The young Meridian's presence nearly made Nora hesitate. Unlike the others, Lysrix had shown them kindness and genuine interest. But the fate of humanity hung in the balance. There was no room for sentiment. The moment came when the maze reconfigured itself into a spiral pattern, placing all the humans in a roughly circular formation. Rodriguez, on the opposite side of the chamber, caught Nora's eye. 3 subtle taps of his finger against his leg gave the countdown. It began with a single note, Nora's perfect pitch finding the resonant frequency she had discovered weeks ago. The sound was barely audible, but the nearest crystal wall showed an almost imperceptible tremor. One by one, other prisoners joined in, each adding their specific frequency to create a complex harmonic discord. The Meridians noticed something was wrong almost immediately. Their crystalline forms vibrated in sympathy with the human-generated frequencies. Rodax's form flickered like a disturbed reflection on water. "Stop them," the command reverberated through the chamber, but it was too late. The humans' voices rose in a carefully calculated cacophony. Each note had been chosen to create destructive interference patterns in the Meridian's crystalline structure. The chamber's walls began to crack, fine lines spreading like spider webs across their surface. Lysrix was the first to understand the true nature of what was happening. "They've weaponized discord," the young scientist's thoughts broadcast panic to the others. "They've found the harmonic flaws in our crystalline matrix." The Meridian guards attempted to activate their containment fields, but their control over the ship's systems was already compromised by the spreading harmonic disruption. The humans' voices grew stronger, more confident, as they saw their plan working. The crystalline walls shattered in sections, raining glittering shards that dissolved into nothing before hitting the floor. Rodax's form began to fragment, the perfect geometric patterns of its crystalline body developing fractures that spread with each passing second. The other Meridians were similarly affected, their bodies resonating with frequencies that threatened to tear them apart at a molecular level. In desperation, the Meridians attempted to reconfigure the chamber's structure, but this only made things worse. The humans' discord spread through the ship's neural network like a virus, disrupting the harmonic patterns that held everything together. Entire sections of the vessel began to crystallize and shatter. Nora maintained her note with perfect pitch, even as chaos erupted around them. Rodriguez coordinated the other prisoners, adjusting their voices to counter the Meridians' attempts to regain control. The harmony of destruction grew more complex, more powerful, as each human found their confidence and strength. Through the spreading destruction, Nora caught sight of Lysrix attempting to reach the chamber's control interface. The young Meridian's form flickered and distorted, but there was no fear in its thoughts, only amazement. "Remarkable," Lysrix broadcast. "You've turned our greatest strength into our greatest weakness." The chamber's main entrance shattered, creating a path to freedom. Rodriguez began leading groups of prisoners out while others maintained the destructive harmony. The Meridians, their bodies literally coming apart at a molecular level, could only watch as their carefully constructed experiment fell apart around them. As Nora prepared to evacuate with the others, she locked eyes with Rodax one final time. The Sentinel Prime's once magnificent crystalline form was now a fractured shadow of itself. "You were right to fear humanity," she said aloud, her words carrying clearly through the chaos. "We will always find a way to overcome." The human prisoners made their way through the disintegrating ship, their voices maintaining the frequencies that kept the Meridians at bay. But this was only the beginning. They still had to find a way off the vessel, and more importantly, they had to warn Earth about the planned invasion. The harmony of their resistance had shattered the Meridians' power, but the real battle for humanity's survival was just beginning. Freedom brought new challenges. The escaped prisoners navigated through corridors of fractured crystal, their voices maintaining a constant harmonic barrier against any Meridian pursuit. Nora led the way, with Rodriguez bringing up the rear, both of them analyzing the ship's layout for any strategic advantage they could find. The vessel's structure had begun to destabilize under the influence of their sonic assault. Crystalline walls that once flowed like liquid now cracked and splintered, creating both obstacles and opportunities. Through the transparent sections, they could see other levels of the ship where more human prisoners were still held captive. "We need to free the others," Rodriguez said, his military training evident in how quickly he assessed their tactical situation. "More voices means more power against their systems." Nora agreed, but they had to be smart about it. The Meridians might be vulnerable to their sonic attack, but they weren't defenseless. They discovered their first real advantage in what appeared to be a control nexus. The crystalline panels still responded to touch, though their usual perfect harmony was disrupted by hairline fractures. Nora studied the alien interfaces, recognizing patterns similar to those she'd observed during her captivity. "The ship's systems are all connected through harmonic resonance," she explained to the others. "If we can access their communication network, we might be able to reach the other detention areas." Her fingers danced across the crystal surfaces, feeling for the right frequencies. A holographic display materialized, showing the ship's layout in 3 dimensions. Red clusters indicated areas where other humans were held. But more concerning were the pulsing purple sections that revealed gathering groups of Meridians. Their captors were reorganizing, adapting to the humans' sonic warfare. Junior Sentinel Lysrix's familiar thought patterns suddenly resonated through the chamber, but weaker than before. The young Meridian had followed them, its crystalline form now webbed with cracks but still intact. "You don't understand the full consequences of what you've done," Lysrix projected. "The ship's harmonic core is destabilizing. If it shatters, everything within 3 light minutes will be destroyed." Some of the humans raised their voices defensively, but Nora held up a hand for silence. Despite everything, Lysrix had always been different from the others. "Then help us," she proposed. "You've studied us. You know humanity doesn't want conflict. We just want our freedom." The following moments stretched with tension as Lysrix's fractured form shifted in thought. Finally, the young scientist moved to the control interface. "The harmonics must be perfectly balanced," Lysrix explained, manipulating the crystal controls. "Too much discord will trigger a cascade failure. But if we modulate the frequencies correctly." Working together, Nora and Lysrix created a map of safe passages through the ship, areas where their sonic attacks wouldn't risk triggering a core breach. Rodriguez immediately began organizing the escaped prisoners into teams, each assigned to free a different detention section. As they moved through the ship, they discovered that some of the freed prisoners had useful skills. A quantum physicist helped them understand the ship's propulsion systems. A musical theorist aided in refining their harmonic attacks. Each person brought something valuable to their growing resistance. The Meridians attempted to counter their advance by reconfiguring the ship's architecture, but this only caused more damage. Every crystal wall they reformed was vulnerable to the humans' carefully calculated frequencies. The aliens had never imagined that their perfect harmonious technology could be turned against them so effectively. In one detention block, they found a group of civilian musicians who had been abducted from a symphony orchestra. This proved to be a crucial discovery. The musicians' trained ears and perfect pitch made them especially effective at generating the destructive frequencies. Under Nora's guidance, they became the core of their sonic warfare capability. But the Meridians weren't finished. As the humans approached a major detention center, they encountered a new defense. The aliens had adapted, creating interference patterns that tried to disrupt the humans' voices. The crystalline walls vibrated with competing frequencies, making it harder for the resistance to maintain their protective discord. Rodriguez recognized the danger first. "They're learning," he warned. "We need to change tactics before they find a way to neutralize our advantage." Nora agreed, and with Lysrix's help, they began developing new harmonic combinations that the Meridians wouldn't expect. The resistance grew with each freed group of prisoners. What had started as 37 voices became hundreds, then thousands. The ship's corridors rang with carefully orchestrated chaos as humans from different backgrounds united in their song of rebellion. Through it all, Nora kept them focused on their larger mission. It wasn't enough to just escape, they had to find a way to protect Earth from the coming invasion. The ship's database, accessed through their captured control nexus, revealed the horrifying scale of the Meridian's plans. This vessel was just one of many, all preparing to harvest humanity for study and eventual elimination. As the Resistance secured another deck of the massive ship, Nora studied the tactical display with growing concern. They had freed perhaps half of the human prisoners, but the Meridians were adapting faster than expected. More importantly, the ship's harmonic core was showing signs of increasing instability. Time was running out. They needed to either find a way to stabilize the core or evacuate everyone before it reached critical resonance. And somewhere in the chaos, they had to secure proof of the planned invasion to warn Earth. The humans had won their first battle against their crystalline captors, but the war for survival was far from over. The ship's harmonic core pulsed with increasing instability, its crystalline chamber casting fractured rainbows across the faces of those gathered in the control nexus. Nora studied the holographic displays, her expression grim as she interpreted the readings. They had perhaps an hour before total system failure. The core's resonance patterns are collapsing, Lysrix projected, the young Meridian's thoughts noticeably weaker than before. When they do, the resulting quantum cascade will destroy everything within this sector of space. Around them, the ship groaned as its crystalline structure continued to degrade under the strain of competing harmonics. Rodriguez approached with reports from the rescue teams. They had freed nearly all the human prisoners, over 5,000 in total, but evacuation remained a critical problem. The emergency pods are crystalline tech, he explained. They're as unstable as everything else. We can't risk using them. But Nora had been formulating a plan, one that seemed impossible yet followed the logical patterns she'd observed in Meridian technology. We don't need the escape pods, she said, moving to the main control interface. We need to take the whole ship. The idea was audacious. The humans had learned to disrupt the Meridian's crystalline technology, but controlling it was another matter entirely. Yet as Nora explained her theory, even Lysrix's fractured form seemed to pulse with renewed interest. The ship's systems are based on harmonic resonance, Nora explained, her fingers dancing across the crystal controls. We've been using discord to disrupt them, but what if we could find the right harmony instead? Not to break the systems, but to sync with them? The symphony members they'd rescued were crucial to this plan. Under Nora's guidance, they began experimenting with different harmonic combinations. Instead of destructive interference, they sought frequencies that would resonate with the ship's systems in a controlled way. Time became their enemy as the core's instability grew. The remaining Meridians, led by a desperately weakened Rodax, launched a final offensive. They had adapted to the humans' sonic warfare, generating counter-frequencies that threatened to neutralize their advantage. But humanity's greatest strength had always been adaptation. As the Meridians advanced, the resistance split into two groups. One maintained the defensive discord while the other worked with Nora to master the ship's harmonics. Every failure brought them closer to success as they learned the precise frequencies needed. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young cellist noticed that the ship's crystal walls vibrated in perfect fifth intervals when stable. This musical knowledge, combined with Nora's understanding of frequency patterns and Lysrix's insights into Meridian technology, gave them the key they needed. The Resistance orchestrated their most complex performance yet. Multiple harmonies wove together, some disrupting the attacking Meridians while others resonated with the ship's systems. Gradually, sections of the vessel began responding to their control. Rodax and the remaining Meridian forces found themselves trapped between opposing harmonics. Their crystalline forms, already weakened by prolonged exposure to discord, began to freeze in place as the humans gained control of the environmental systems. You don't understand what you're doing, Rodax projected desperately. Our civilization spent millennia perfecting these harmonics. You cannot possibly master them in days. But the Sentinel Prime's thoughts held a note of uncertainty now, perhaps recognizing that they had catastrophically underestimated human adaptability. With the Meridians contained, Nora focused on the critical task of stabilizing the core. The humans' voices joined in perfect harmony, guided by the musicians' expertise and Nora's calculations. Slowly, the dangerous resonance patterns began to smooth out as they found the right frequencies. Lysrix proved invaluable in these final moments, helping them understand the subtle nuances of Meridian technology. The young scientist had chosen to side with humanity, recognizing that their potential for growth and adaptation was something to be studied and celebrated, not feared and eliminated. As the core stabilized, Nora accessed the ship's navigation systems. The crystalline interfaces responded to their harmonized commands, plotting a course back to Earth. But they weren't finished yet. Through the ship's communication array, they broadcast a warning to the other Meridian vessels, demonstrating their newfound control over the crystalline technology. "Humanity is not your test subject," Nora transmitted, her words carried on frequencies that the Meridians couldn't ignore. "We've mastered your technology in days, while remaining true to our own nature. Imagine what we could achieve as allies instead of enemies." The response came slowly, rippling through the crystalline communication networks. The Meridian High Council, watching their most advanced ship commandeered by their supposed test subjects, recognized the truth in her words. Humanity's adaptability and creativity weren't threats to be eliminated, but rather qualities that could enhance their own civilization. As the ship approached Earth orbit, negotiations began. The humans had proven themselves not just capable of surviving, but of understanding and controlling technology that had taken the Meridians generations to develop. A new chapter in both species' history was about to begin. Nora stood at the ship's control nexus, watching her home planet grow larger in the crystalline viewport. The chamber hummed with perfect harmony now, human voices working in concert with Meridian technology. They had done more than just escape. They had shown that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in weapons or technology, but in their ability to learn, adapt, and transform apparent weaknesses into unprecedented advantages. Rodriguez joined her at the viewport, his expression reflecting the pride and amazement they all felt. "Not bad for a sound engineer," he said with a smile. Around them, the ship's crystal walls pulsed with rainbow light, no longer a prison but a bridge between two civilizations. The infamous human test subjects had become humanity's first ambassadors to a vast crystalline empire, and the universe would never be quite the same.